Kia ora koutou katoa. Warm greetings to you all and welcome to Talk 1 of the Connect and Develop series. I'm Fiona Scanlon, Alumni Relations Advisor at the University of Auckland, and it's a real pleasure to be with you today to kick off this series. The world of work is changing more rapidly than ever before, and the Connect and Develop series is here to bring you tools that can help you develop along the way. Today's topic, influencing in the hybrid office, is particularly relevant as we adapt to new patterns of work, renegotiate work-life boundaries, and look for purpose in work. Our speaker is Aopare Jews, who is a corporate partner at Chapman Tripp and was inducted into the university's 40 under 40 business leaders category last year. Joining Aopare today is our MC, Sarah Moyne. Over the past 15 years, Sarah has worked in various career development and employability roles in Aotearoa, New Zealand and the UK, working alongside people at key transition points to create positive impact and growth. During her career, she has promoted careers messages across a variety of media, featuring in the TV2 series Just the Job, Vibe series Starting Over, and co-delivering workshops at national and international career development conferences in New Zealand. Sarah is currently the manager of the university's career development and employability team, which supports current students and recent alumni to build clarity, connection, and confidence. Sarah is going to share a bit more about our speaker Aopare with us in a moment, and later have a brief discussion with her before opening it up to ask your questions. On behalf of all of us here at the university, I'd like to say many thanks to Sarah and Aopare for being a part of this series. And to everyone joining us, I hope you find today's webinar useful. Over to you, Sarah.
Kia ora, Fiona. Sorry, I appear to be having a little bit of a problem with my video. Hang on a second. There I am. It's lovely to be here, and thanks for asking to be a part of it. So, tēnā koutou, ngā mihi nui kia koutou katoa. Before I start introducing Te Aopare, I do want to cover just a few tips for participating in today's webinar for everyone. So the Q&A function at the bottom of your on-screen Zoom panel is live, and please do submit your questions at any time. We will be monitoring those as we go. And I'd also like to encourage you to upvote the questions that you find the most interesting. These questions will then move to the top of the Q&A screen. And towards the end of today's webinar, Te Aopare will be answering some of the highest rated questions. So without further ado, I would like to introduce today's speaker, Te Aopare Jews. In addition to her role as a corporate partner at Chapman Tripp, Te Aopare leads the firm's Māori legal group, Te Waka Ture. Te Aopare has long been an advocate for flexible working arrangements that provide opportunities for women like herself, as a mother of 2 young children, to remain in private practice while also managing those whānau responsibilities. So she was promoted to partner in 2020, and Te Aopare has recently been recognised on the University of Auckland's 40 under 40 list, in addition to NZ Lawyers 2021 Elite Women list, which highlights innovative women in law. And she was particularly commended for being a role model for wahine Māori lawyers, and also her contribution to diversity and equality in the legal profession. Over to you, Te Aopare.
Tēnā kātou, tēnā hoki kia koe Sarah nau I tūwhera I tēnei me o mihi mai ki au. Hoi anō he tika māku I raro I ngā tikanga Māori kia mihi atu ki ngā mate huhua o te wānei a kāti ki te whānau Jackson. E noho pani tonu nei I te ngaro atu o whaia June o Matua Moana hoki. Nei reira he tika me mihi atu ki a rāua ki ngā whānau e noho pani ani. Ana a kāti ki ngā whānau maha me o rātou mate ka tangi. Ka hoki mai kia tātou te hunga ora, koutou mā kua hui mai nei, kei te mihi kia tātou katoa. Hiuri a hau no Ngāti Porou, Ngāti Rangitihi, Ngāti Whakaue, ko Te Aopare tōku ingoa. Thanks, Fiona and Sarah, and thank you to the university for the recognition. Pleased to say I am still under 40 and really appreciate being recognised in that way. And have fond memories of the University of Auckland and the studies that I did there at law school and in the School of Biological Sciences as well. I am a partner at Chapman Tripp and have the pleasure of leading our Te Wakature practice, which involves a lot of work across the firm in a collaborative manner with other teams. And in the large law firm, we also have a number of junior lawyers that come through and join us, and we're responsible for training those lawyers and then you know, and then them contributing to the work we do with our clients. So the title of today's presentation is Influencing in the Hybrid Office. And I just wanted, I guess, to set the scene of the context that I come from. I went from university into private practice, into another large law firm. Minter Ellison, was there for 3 years and then came to Chapman Tripp and have been here ever since. So my experiences come from the context of a large law firm, and so that, you know, that's where my comments are coming from. And so I'm really keen for our discussions and our questions, perhaps to flush out some of the differences that might arise in different contexts, for a corporate, for example. So in a large law firm, we have partners who we're responsible for sort of managing the client relationships and things like that. We work collaboratively across lots of different teams. So my team, we work with our tax partners and lawyers. We work with our property partners and lawyers, and we work a lot with the experts who do trust law as well. So as a result of that, there's a lot of collaboration and there's not a lot of autonomous working. So that's sort of across team. And then we also have a model where we a lot of the actual day-to-day work, so the drafting, the preparation of documents, liaising with clients, that is done by the lawyers who I work with, and less by me. So I'm reviewing the work that they produce, and I'm reviewing the advice and things like that that they are drafting, but less and less I'm actually drafting. I'm not actually doing the drafting myself. So the context there is that we work collaboratively within our teams as well. And I have a responsibility to check the work of the people in my team, to help them get up to speed with the whatever it is that we're working on, if I've got experience in that already. And we, the model that large law firms run is that we bring in a lot of graduates every year, and then we bring them through, and we hope that we can retain them. Flexible working is one of the things that we hope we hope will retain our lawyers. And so as a result of that model, again, we don't have many people in our teams who work autonomously. And I think that is really relevant for the discussion here around, you know, what a hybrid office might look like. So then moving on then to my second point, I guess one of the reasons why I have always been a champion for flexible working is that firstly, I think it creates trust between team members. We're all adults. Everybody, you know, we all need to service clients. That's another context that's really relevant. And but actually it's up to us to manage our day and our client deliverables and, you know, getting stuff done on time. But we should be able to do that when it best suits us. So if that means you need to start a little bit later because you've got an appointment in the morning, or you would like to spend some time with your children in the afternoon or the evening, then my personal view is that we should have the flexibility to do that, provided we are still servicing our clients, because as a lawyer, that's our primary objective, is to service our clients. And so I've always been a champion for flexible working, and I had the privilege of being able to work for a partner, Nick Wells, who had that model himself when he had, in particular, when he had young children. And, you know, he was kind of ahead of his time at that time. One, he was a male, and it was less common for men to choose to do things like school drop-off and school pickup. But his view was very much that you should be able to get your work done you know, around your other whānau commitments. So I was really lucky to have that as a model, and it's something that I have been very strong about as a mum of a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. I think that actually COVID and lockdown has really helped us in that regard, and that's, you know, worldwide that has been recognised. So the first thing that we have had to do in order to make flexible working a possibility is to invest in the technology and the hardware, actually. So as a firm, we were really agile. We already had provided all of the tech to our people and most of the hardware, although I admit that in the first lockdown, I bought my own headset, I bought a mouse and a keyboard, you know, wireless, and bought an extra screen as well. So I wasn't just on my laptop. So I invested that in my work setup at home because I wanted it to be as seamless as possible. So I wanted it to be easy to work at home. And so I think that's the other thing that's really important if we are going to provide flexible working and encourage a hybrid office approach, then there needs to be a recognition by all involved that you know, you have to have the IT needs to be seamless, so you need to have a computer that can, you know, link into the systems and talk to the systems, and you also need to have the hardware and ideally a home office setup that's fairly comfortable. I am set up in the garage, which I share during lockdown, shared along with my husband, who was in the garage with me. So that was less than ideal. We had blankets to stop the draft and things like that when it was really cold. But otherwise, we were pretty well set up with our multiple screens and our keyboards and things like that we got from PB Tech. So that's the other part, I think. And we recognised that, you know, we had the space to do that. We had lawyers, young lawyers in our teams who were sharing flats with lots of people. And so during lockdown, that wasn't easy for them. They were, you know, sitting in their bedrooms, on their beds, or in the dining room with other people. And so, you know, that was a less than ideal situation. So I think in all of these discussions, it's really important to recognise the privilege of having somewhere where you can work from home in order to enable that level of flexibility. And then the other thing we were just talking about today actually is that the flexible working that I'm able to do at the moment is sort of start my day at home with a few internal phone calls, catching up with team members and things like that, which means I don't need to rush out of the door and I can spend a bit more time with the chaos of breakfast. But I have the privilege of having a car park at work. I did used to catch the bus though, and so I would just time the bus to go along the motorway from West Auckland along the bus lane. But having a car park enables that flexibility. And so I think for all of us, if you are a leader in a firm, or even if you are looking to do flexible working, it's reminding the people that you're with that actually that gets harder for you if you need to catch the early bird parking rates, or if, you know, the express buses only come between kind of 7 and 8 a.m. or whatever the timetable is. So it's just being really upfront about those discussions. And then for those of us that are in management roles or leadership roles, it's being aware that the people in your team all have different different places to travel from and different restrictions in that regard. And so it's being really open about those key discussion points, I think. The third point is that, again, as a result of lockdowns, particularly in our law firm, that's the experience I draw from, is that there is now finally an acceptance that people are working when they are at home, that productivity doesn't necessarily just fall through into a black hole and people are just mucking around at home. I think there is a much broader acceptance now that people can work from home and can be effective there. Whereas I would say that most of the people at this law firm who were probably from a particular demographic, probably a particular gender and a particular age group, had the view that wasn't possible, that if people were at home, then they probably weren't working. Whereas that, I would say that's been completely dispelled as a result of the lockdowns. And so that's a great thing. And so for those of us who are trying to champion flexible working in the hybrid office, now is the time to really capitalize on that change in viewpoint, I think. But the third point I wanted to touch on, and I hope this is where most of our questions will come from, is that in the context, again, that I've had where we work collaboratively and there's not as much autonomy, and there's a lot of collaboration and a lot of training that we do on the job training with our juniors, is that it's really important, I think, to have time in the office together. And so what we are navigating now as leaders of our firm is, what does that look like? What does this hybrid office look like? And how do we get everybody to get to the point of agreeing that there does need to be, a number of days a week where everybody is in the office on those same days, and between, I don't know, a certain number of hours of the day, in order to build those connections, to have those natural discussions that just happen organically, to build that culture, and to really have those water cooler chats and those sort of personal chit chats when you're making a cup of tea, things like that, which are much, much harder to do when everybody is online. And I also find that going through documents or giving constructive feedback and things like that, I find personally much easier to do when we are sitting down face to face as well. So my team and I are navigating that at the moment, and we're coming at it from a perspective of how do we as a team make sure we are all firing on all cylinders. And so that's recognizing that some people in my team have an absolute preference for working from home. And so it's kind of bringing them along the journey of thinking, okay, but what are the positives for them of being in the office? And then people like me who actually have a preference of being in the office most of the time, and making sure that I don't set that expectation for everybody. So we've, as a firm, we're looking to what other places are doing in Australia and London, for example. Some law firms have decided to be quite directive. So they've said you must be in the office 3 days a week, and then the other 2 days it's up to you. Some law firms have said, actually, we trust you, you're all adults. We recognise that people want to work flexibly. We encourage you to be in the office, but it's up to you what that looks like. I'm probably somewhere in the middle. And so my team and I are discussing what at least 3 days in the office together looks like. What are the optimal days? Recognizing that there are some weeks where that will flex and change, but doing it from the basis of the why. So getting the why really clear before we actually launch into what that looks like. So the why is the stuff. So the why is we want to fire on all cylinders. How do we do that? We need to keep developing our junior lawyers. We need to be working with other people in the firm, and we need to make real connections with people, and then feeding into that what each individual's personal preferences. So we have some people who really like to start working very, very early in the morning, And then we have some people who really don't start firing until later in the afternoon or into the evening. And so it's sort of recognizing all of those differences and putting them into the mix, and then coming up with a model that sort of suits our sub-team. So that's where we are at the moment. We're still very much learning. At the moment at Chapman Tripp, we have, up until now, we've been following the COVID settings and recommendations. And we think that's what's going to happen probably, is that after the next lot of school holidays, we will be encouraging people back to the office a bit more than what we have been. And then I think it will become on a team by team basis, actually, what works for you and your team in order that everybody is firing on all cylinders. So that is probably where I'm going to end my kōrero, and really keen to get into some discussions and hear some insights actually from Sarah, who has seen a lot of other different examples and has some views actually on what an optimal kind of model looks like.
Kia ora te Aopare. That was a wonderful talk, and thank you so much for sharing your own sort of insights or your own personal experience and how that's been. You know, you've had this personal advocacy towards more of a hybrid model, and you know, COVID seems to have really helped to emphasize the fact that actually there are a lot of strengths to you know, to having both in there. And I think really interesting point around that idea that hybrid working can actually allow us to better harness the individual working styles and the individual strengths of people for a better end result, really. And you know, while I know that the lived experience of virtual work can actually vary a lot, very widely from person to person, depending on what your setup is. I bet you've got the best setup garage in the world now. But it does, you know, it does make a difference. And so to be able to have those conversations without the underlying attitude of, oh, but you know, this is just someone trying not to want to be in the office so they don't have to work, I think offers a lot of freedom and a lot of opportunity for teams, you know, across the board, not just in the legal area. And I particularly liked that idea of getting the why clear when you talk about or establish a hybrid model of working, and that idea that, you know, at the end of the day, you're wanting to, you know, maintain a connection piece. You're wanting to I guess, utilize the ways of best working for everybody. But at the end of the day, it does come down to who are your partners, your clients, who are the people that you're working to serve, and how does the way that you work help to deliver your whys, you know, what you're actually trying to achieve in terms of impact and service for those people, whoever that might be. And again, I think that really translates beautifully across a whole range of different industries. And I know certainly from, you know, from our team's perspective, that's been a big part of, you know, as we've talked about different ways of working and different ways of returning to campus, because we've, you know, we have been mostly virtual for quite a while now. I think just being able to refocus on, you know, why are we here? What change and impact are we trying to produce? And then how can the ways of working allow us to do that in a way that's also good for our teams and for our sense of connection? So, and interesting as well, I think that, you know, when you're talking about being in the office sort of 3 days a week, the advantage of not just the personal connections across teams and the networking, which is something obviously that, you know, that is really hard or much more challenging to maintain, but equally that professional happenstance of those conversations or the, you know, comments that you overhear, and how that can actually lend itself really well to, you know, to better ways of working. So again, I do want to encourage you guys to put down more of your questions and to upvote the questions. So we do have a few that are sitting in here now. I have a couple of my own questions, but what I might do is go first to the Q&A, if that's all right, Te Aopare. So we do have one that was sent in a wee while ago, and this was around your thoughts on new grads and how they feel about that sort of not working necessarily autonomously, as it does seem to be important to both new and sort of more experienced staff. So do you think that they feel more autonomous with the flexible working opportunity than perhaps they would otherwise?
I think so. What I've heard from the younger lawyers in my team, none of them are graduates, but they're still fairly junior, is that what they appreciate is that there's a discussion happening. So they're being treated as adults, and there used to be a perception, which I think was just a perception, that people needed to be present, they needed to be at their desks and things like that. And so I think what our graduates are appreciating is that now there's just an open dialogue that's happening, which makes them feel like adults. And that's the way it should be. I think it's very individual, though, a preference as to whether they like to be given a task and left to get on with it and have that autonomy, versus being given a task and having the ability to just sort of say to the person that's sitting at the desk next door, oh my God, I don't remember what that person said about where I find that resource, or actually never looked on the company's office website before, I don't know what I'm doing. So my understanding from the ones that I work with is it's that those little informal connections to help them along with a job is what's missing from a completely at home working environment. But the ability to be, but the the fact that we're having conversations about people being treated as adults, and you've been given a task, and I would like you to deliver that to me, by 10 o'clock tomorrow, because that fits in with my day and when we need to get it to the client. And I don't care whether you do that task now, or whether you go to the gym now, or whether you and then you log on and do it at 10 o'clock tonight. That's up to you. And so I think that's what people are appreciating from the autonomy. But for the really young ones, what I've been told is that they're missing out on, they are missing the ability to just ask those really kind of simple questions that are they're just harder to do through video, because it feels more formal. You got to pick up the phone, you're ringing someone and you can't see the vibe of that, if that person like super stressed out and they're trying to get something done in that minute, whereas when you're in the office you can pick up those personal cues. Yeah, I'm not sure if that answers the question, but
yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's that importance of communication. It becomes almost more crucial when you're trying to balance out the virtual and the in-person, and figuring out ways to test the waters a little bit. But as you say, it's a lot more of a deliberate action to have to write an email or pick up a phone than it is to lean across to someone beside you. So yeah, really good points. And there was another couple of questions. One was around your own experience in working from home, and I guess this is more in the lockdown side of things. So it's COVID has shifted the impression that people are working from home and not shirking from home. That's my new favourite one. I like that. So this idea that we've sort of almost worked harder than we ever have during that period. So what was your own experience?
Yeah, I think that's right, particularly initially in those first lot of lockdowns. My partner and I, we both found it hard to switch off, and there was definitely an expectation because everybody was doing it. So everybody was online again at 8 o'clock once the kids were in bed. We all sort of seemed to be swept up in that. So I think that's right. I think personally, we're sort of coming, because we're now back to more of a hybrid working style. I've kind of come back to being a bit more purposeful and working with a bit more intent. Whereas those lockdowns, everything would just seem to be a little bit crazy. So at the moment, I think because we're proactively having these discussions, I think just in general, we're all being forced to be much more intentional and much more purposeful about our time and our availability. Yeah.
And this kind of leads on from that, actually, in terms of those challenges of working from home and even within a hybrid and perhaps more deliberate kind of environment. Do you have any advice or tips for new grads where this may well be just their sort of reality? What do you think actually really helps? And it could be what you've personally found helps to maintain that balance.
Yeah, I think what our team has done is we have a daily check-in. And that's really helped. And, you know, it's in the calendar for half an hour at 8:30 in the morning. Sometimes it gets shifted if it needs to, and sometimes it's only 15 minutes. But we've all found it really useful to have that daily check-in, to recognize that, you know, what you said that you were working on the day before might have got completely railroaded by something that was more urgent or something personal that's come up. And so we have another daily check-in to go, okay, where are you at with that? Do you need any help? And so our team has found that really helpful. And then that rechecks to say, okay, well, actually, I'm going to be in the office today, so let's have that chat then. Or actually, I'm going to be at home today. So that's one tip that we've found helpful for our little sub team. And I made sure, I said, let's test this out. And if you guys think it's a complete waste of time, then we'll go back to doing what we were doing previously when they would all email me on a Monday morning with their kind of to-do list. And we just found that that didn't work because it didn't have any way to prioritize it on a day-to-day basis. And probably a lot of that is because our client deliverables do shift and change, you know, at the drop of from a phone call or an email from a client. So we're constantly having to shift, and we're quite reactive, I guess, as lawyers, fairly reactive to our clients' needs and demands. When they say jump, we say how high and when would you like us to do that? And then from our grads, I think what I've asked the younger ones to do is just to keep, because I'm not hearing from them and I can't see them, is for them just to let me know how they're going on a task. And so, and I've sort of said to them, you know, even if I'm not, we've got MS Teams, so you can see when people are online or in a call or whatever. Even if I'm not online, I've always got my phone and I've always got my emails. So just flick me a quick email just to say, you know, just let me know where you're at, because my preference is to hear more from a person than less. The ones that in my team, they were concerned about that. They didn't want to bombard me. They didn't want to flood my, you know, my inbox. They didn't want to annoy me. But I don't find that annoying. And I think it's just being brave to have the conversation to say, you know, how are we going to work? And it's coming back to that, how are we all going to work together to meet our objectives as a team, which is to best service the client. And I think if you can frame all your discussions that way, then it helps everybody move through, getting the, as I said at the beginning, and we've both touched on, getting that why important.
And so it sounds like it's really about being proactive and thinking, how are we going to do this? Not assuming that things will kind of fall out or become clear, but really thinking through these things ahead of time. And with the mindset of, let's try it. It's not this is now set in stone, but here's what I think might work. What do other people think? Let's give it a go. Let's keep reviewing it. So it's that ongoing and proactive sort of communication and planning versus which personally I think is probably one of the differences than it was in lockdown, in that we were in full reactive, responsive, kind of what's right in front of me, let's get through this. Whereas the hybrid workplace, a key difference is that you can do that in a very planned, deliberate, positive way that again allows you to get the best of both worlds, I suppose. Now, there's a couple of slightly different questions, so I'm just going to pop those across to you. So have you got any views on the responsibilities that businesses have to create a vibrant city centre, which then leads to a great city to live in and out of work hours?
this person works for Phil Goff.
Nice question, Phil.
Yes. The responsibility. I haven't put any thought into that. Sorry. I mean, I've been very aware of, I'd listened to the interview with the owner of Ema restaurant, and I've heard the struggles, but no, I haven't proactively put my mind to the role of Chapman Tripp in that. I guess because in my mind, I have to prioritize the grey matter, and so that focus is, first and foremost, my family, and then secondly, the service of my clients and looking after my team to do that. So I haven't stepped back to then have any space around anything broader than that.
I think that's absolutely fair enough. And I guess one of the things as well is that this situation is evolving, and it's still evolving, and it's still in a very uncertain area. I do know that one of the things on a teeny tiny scale that we've been trying to do is being able to, for team building or connecting, is to think about, well, how can we do something that's local to our office, or that's more than just staying in the office, but perhaps using more of the areas around. But I think that's an incredibly complex and ongoing issue that will continue to sort of be looked at, I suppose, by many people in the area. It's a very tricky situation. And a couple of others as well. One for a current student. Thanks very much for asking this. I'll be looking for my first job at the end of the year. Should I expect flexible working conditions, or do I need to ask for them? And if so, how do I go about that?
I think you should definitely feel empowered to ask for them. It's basically a graduate market at the moment. There is a brain drain to Aussie, to London, basically to everywhere that's not Auckland, to the regions. And so, you should feel really empowered to ask about it, of course, in a polite and respectful way, as you would ask any question. And I expect that it will be something that they'll use as a selling point. I think all the corporates and definitely all the service firms are looking hard at this and really acknowledging that if you are seen as sort of being in the stone ages about this stuff, or not really walking the talk, having a fancy policy but not actually backing it up by action, then that's going to be called out pretty quickly. So I think you should absolutely feel empowered to ask broadly about the policy of the workplace. But then also, I think if you get to the point of talking to the people that you're going to be working with, actually asking them how it currently works, because at Chapman Tripp in particular, I expect what we'll have a fairly broad brush policy that basically leaves it to us as our sub teams to determine what best works for us and the demands of our particular clients. And so, it's all good and well to start with the big fancy policy, but I think you want to ask the specific team that you're going into how they do things.
I like that. So sort of, can you talk me through what your team's sort of philosophy or approach is to actually making hybrid working part of your team? And one a little bit similar, actually. How do I make myself stand out in a hybrid office when both myself and my work might be hidden? So that is a concern that I know that other people have raised around, you're not in front of people.
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. And I think that's something the leaders here at Chapman Tripp we've been talking about, because we have this tendency, a client gives you some work that they need help with, and you sort of look around and it's this line of sight way of delegating to the work to the people that you can see in front of you. And so it's something that we are all proactively having to go, I just did that. I really need to think about my whole team, or who is the best person for this job. So in terms of what you can do if you feel like your work is hidden or is not being appropriately recognized, I think again it just comes down to having a chat to the person that you're working on that project with. It's very team specific and specific to the style of the person that you're working with. So yeah, if I answered that, I would only be talking to what I would say to my team, but I think it's very specific to who you're working with there.
Makes a lot of sense. And one other that's a little more away from the sort of the tip side of things. Do you have any thoughts about immunocompromised team members or team members that are, for example, in multi-generational households that may want to be protecting babies and elders? What sort of thought, or is there tolerance there for that idea? And this person's acknowledged that these questions are a bit more murky now that we don't have a COVID-0 approach. But yeah, just any thoughts, or how does that tie into?
Yeah, we've been really conscious about that as a firm as well, because we do have people in my team who are immunocompromised, and my broader team, not my team alone, and we've got lots of people that live in have young kids or have immunocompromised kids. So it's a discussion that comes up at the table a lot, and that's why we will have a very broad policy, and then it will become extremely team specific. And I think at the end of the day, it comes down to, are we all doing our job, which is to service our clients, and that will be our frame of reference. So yeah, it just becomes part of the discussions we have on an individual basis, because we've always been very conscious of people's positions in that regard.
And I'm imagining that for people who are in that situation, one of those situations, a key sort of value add is to actually come to that conversation with a really proactive, solutions-focused approach around, look, here are my thoughts on how I can make this work, or how I can make sure that our end goal of servicing the clients is also, balanced out with the particular situation. And we do have another one around how you will communicate to other teams. So once your team decide your guidelines, have you thought about how you'll communicate? It's currently a challenge for my workplace. We want to be flexible, but we also need to be efficient. Sometimes it's better to have a meeting instead of multiple emails. Thank you, Rebecca.
Yeah, agree. Most generally always more efficient to have a meeting rather than multiple emails. So in terms of communicating it, classic lawyer's answer, it depends. So we're going to get our rules of engagement as between ourselves nailed down, and then I guess to the extent we're collaborating across into other parts of the firm, if that then means that they need to know what our little sub team is doing, or when people are working from home or whatever, then we'll communicate it at that point. But I don't see us as announcing anything, because largely because it's likely to change, and we'll just be testing something and then seeing if it works, and then a specific project might come in where for some reason we all have to, it's all better if we're actually in the office 5 days a week for that particular project. So yeah, I think as a follow-on, allowing different managers to have their own policy runs a risk of inconsistent. Yeah, it does. And Chapman Trip, we're quite a broad church sort of approach anyway. So for us, that works. I can see how there would be sort of more command control firms or corporates where that wouldn't work, and I just don't have the experience of that. So at Chapman Trip it works for us because that's just kind of how we already work with everything we do.
Yeah, again, planning and constant communication and a flexible mindset, I think, helps a lot. Well, thanks to everyone for your questions, your attention, your participation, especially for you, Te Aopare, to share your own thoughts and experience in this. It has been Te Aopare and I's pleasure to discuss influencing in the hybrid office with you today. So the Connect and Develop series brings you professional development talks covering topics that are designed to help you understand and adapt to these changes we're seeing in the world of work. And today, just to remind, was talk 1 of the series. There are 3 to go. So the second one is this Thursday, and then there's 2 more in semester 2. If you did like today's topic and you want to join us for the next talk, or you'd like to invite fellow students or alumni, please just visit auckland.ac.nz/connect and develop, or just forward the link. So thanks again for joining us today, everybody. We hope to see you soon at one of the other talks. Ka kite.